it seems that we're like artificially sustaining 7 billion people with non-renewable fossil fuels, and from this perspective, there is sort of no solution to being able to keep everybody alive once the fossil fuels are gone. So therefore, do you think government should be embracing permaculture type?
I presume so, but everybody is. But I mean, look, you've got a tougher road to hoe than I have, because I mean, all we have to do is convert people to the spiritual. But you lot have to actually convert people. To the spiritual in theory. See, it wasn't urgently practical. See, stop sinning, or you'll drop dead. It wasn't that. It was stop sinning, or you'll go to hell. And people said, "Oh, fair enough. I don't know what hell's all about." So, we'll just live on it. But you lot are saying, stop sinning, or else hell will freeze over.
Oh, we're going to wreck the environment.
Yeah, all of that stuff. You'll won't have a place to live in. You're fouling your own nest. Stop. See? So you have to be more morally draconian than even the religions. So that's what I'm hoping, you see, because I know there's a philosophy around, I don't know whose it is, Diamond, was a bloke of Diamond wrote Big
Jared
Books,
Diamond?
yeah. You see, and he's saying, girls and boys, for God's sake, we'll have to just wake up to ourselves and live off the earth, and you can't live off the earth if she's overprotecting and all that stuff. So I agree. I mean, and I agree with what he called Occupy Melbourne, Occupy New York.
What are your thoughts on that?
If the basic, I told him the other day, Occupy Melbourne, I said, listen, your problem is that you're right. But you're right, but you're not presenting it in a palatable way. See? You're like old time preachers. You see, you're right, and you see what I mean. So I said, you've got in this country anyway. What about anywhere else?
Yeah.
In this country anyway, I would have thought that you'd have to have a funny way of being serious. Now, how you do it, I don't know. I mean, I do it myself as religion. It's taken me 40 years, for God's sake. And people are only twigging now and letting me get away with it in public now. So if I mention Jesus, which I did last night at the Gaia chicken factory, you see they let me get away with it. I mentioned on 3AW this morning, I was talking to my friend Jesus just the other day, who'd been through the same ordeal. Now, they didn't just cut me off and say he's bloody lunatic, because I could get away with it. But that's because you were being serious in a funny way. I think the same has to be done with all of these big issues, you see.
Yeah.
And it has to be done, as you people know better than I do.
What could the Occupy Melbourne or the Occupy movement be doing differently or better?
I don't know how you take. I'd have to look at what the issue is. If the issue is she agreed, and if you boil it all down, you end up with some warning, an advisory coming out of Occupy whatever city, and that is greed will kill us. Now, if you want to then transpose that to a discussion of the stock exchange, well, that's whatever. But basically, they're trying to warn us against the bad effects of greed.
Excesses.
Now, I would have thought that was the same as you lot.
Sure.
See what I mean? Yeah. And then it's up to you lot. You almost turn into prophetic persons / priests, because that's what prophetic persons / priests, one of which I am. That's what their job was. They then exceeded their job and became clerics.
Yeah.
The cleric then becomes confused that his job is not to be a go-between, but his job, he then assumes a powerful position which was never meant for prophetic or / priestly persons. So, I mean, you lot are going through the same ordeal that our lot would have gone through with just religion on the rocks.
Sure.
Yours is not religion on the rocks, but yours is religion. See?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with this, and we can talk till the bloody cows come home, the problem with this is the vocabulary. Because we're speaking in tongues. So that there could be a meeting of minds easily, except for the bloody vocabulary. So we get in a brawl over the meaning of a word or something, like your Gaia. You could end up in a brawl easily with theologians and all that.
Sure.
What do you call it? An independent listener.
Well, the guy,
Yeah, it would in fact be so, well hang on, I mean it sounds like the same things to me.
Well, I think some people have problems with the Gaia theory because they're thinking that we mean that the Earth has, as if the Earth itself has a consciousness.
Well that's what,
Well,
you
we see
that's-
it more from a systems theory way from about that.
Yeah.
The whole is greater than the sum of
Yeah,
its
that's
parts.
right.
Yeah, it sort of works in
Yeah,
that
but
way.
you could almost get no fight, I would have thought, these days, with my lot, the Roman Catholics. I don't know what you'd get from the evangelicals, because they might be spooked because they have to take the Bible literally. And they might think it's idolatry, that you're saying that the earth has got a personality of its own, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't worry me, because I think it's just speaking in tongues.
Do you think the Earth as a whole is...
Well, it's got something, and I mean, this is the whole point, whether you... I prefer the whole picture, including God, to be bigger rather than smaller.
Yeah.
You see? So you've got parallel universes and you've got quantum theology, I think somebody's talking about. So it sounds as though it'll I think it's orthodox but unconventional. So you end up in slanging matches over the unconvention of the idea. And that, to me, that's neither here nor there. It's a matter of taste. But it's orthodox, so to speak, the right stuff to be thinking of the world, Earth. I mean, I'm thinking of whatever the word is these days. I mean, you've got galaxy, you've got beyond that. What do you got? You've got
It's
more.
parallel universe, the multiverse.
Yeah, I know. But is that the biggest descriptive
So
word?
far, the multiverses.
You can't go any bigger than that?
Not at the moment, I don't think.
No. Well, I would say that that's the beauty of modern science. You know, by the time we get there, this happens, and by the time we get to the next one, and by the time we get, we're a bloke on the telly, I don't know what his name is, who's trying to tell us that this is what's going to happen anyway, and there's going to be a thing happen, and it's going to blow, they're going to have a black hole, and we're all going down the black hole, and we're talking, what, billions of years, and we can't do anything about it. I presume you people with intelligence will work something out that we can do about it. Maybe if, I don't mean, we could have avoided the bad effects of the Ice Age.
Well, here's one. See, one of the next questions I have is how are we ever going to become a sustainable and environmentally friendly species whilst we're still at war with each other?
They can't.
You know?
So that's where religions fit in. I remember one of ours, Hans Kung, I think, said 40 years ago, there can be no world peace until there is peace amongst the religions. It's 40 years ago, you see. And then you had that other man, of course, come in. Can I remember his name? About the clash of civilizations.
Is that Jared Diamond?
No, clash of civilizations is, yes, Huntington. All trying to interpret what's going on in this lovely planet of ours. Is there a fault line culturally from north to south, so that you've got the Orthodox on that side, and you've got the Romans on this side, and you've still got conflicts, as was illustrated in the Balkan War, and it's happening all around the world when we're trying to work out what kind of Islam is next door to you. Should you worry if it's moderate, if it's secular, if it's... So all of that stuff's going on, you know. I mean, the poor old Earth, on the one hand you'd say she was groaning with hard labour, but on the other hand, the result of the groaning in hard labour might end up with the birth of a new not a new race, I suppose, not a new species, but I mean,
like a new religion.
You lot are doing better as a religion, so to speak, than the old religions, because they tend to have floated away into outer space. Although my mob, the Romans, are trying to become green, you know, except there'll be a brawl amongst them around the world, I suppose, about whether going green in fact means relegating God into an impossible, untenable position. But I don't believe that to be true, see, because God is part of.
What about the fears, though, that all this green environmentalism could lead to an eco-dictatorship?
Now that one I'm not too sure about, because I read that thing there and I'm saying, you know, the conspiracy theory, because we were listening to a bloke, John Safran, and I interviewed a bloke called Ike.
David Icke?
David
Oh,
Icke.
he's a full-on conspiracy.
See what I mean?
Yeah, he's a bit too...
Now he's frightening, you see, as is anybody else who comes on and says, this is a conspiracy by the Echo, da 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 da,
Yeah.
and you think to yourself, well, geez, I don't know, just say it is, and then we instill fear, and people who are afraid will end up fighting. I don't know whether it has to come to that, but we have to keep talking about it and keep talking amongst ourselves to understand the vocabulary. You see, I'm perfectly happy with it. You know, I'm perfectly happy that I can understand the fear. But you would almost, wouldn't you have to be a conspiracy theorist?
No, myself, I'm not.
No, but any of us, if we got terrified by the idea there's a conspiracy on.
Sure, well, I think some conspiracies do happen in part of nature, but I think they get exaggerated a lot through the internet.
Yeah.
And this is a crazy idea.
Well, your friend Andrew Bolt.
Not my friend.
And
His
my Cardinal Pell.
Yeah.
You see, that's a bit disturbing insofar as they frighten you by saying, don't forget boys and girls, all of this is not true. And then you're thinking, well, geez, 24 hours, how much research have I got to do, you know?
Yeah, well, Andrew Bolt's a climate skeptic. I was going to say, do you think this big belief in climate skepticism amongst so many people is part of our separation that we have with nature, that we don't want to recognise?
Well, I don't know who they are. If you run a profile test over them to find out what their background is and how did they come to this conclusion. But I mean, yes, we've lost touch with nature. I don't know what the percentage of us is, but I've been in this place, I've got a garden there which is nice, but I mean, under stress, and I went up this morning actually to the botanical gardens to get look, I'd rather be in a garden or a forest or on the ocean shore to think about deep and meaningful things. Because in these joints, I mean, you've got everything cluttering in your mind, and the phone rings, the mobile phone, the text, the computer, here it goes now. See what I mean? Where's the best place for us to go to think clearly is to Mother Nature. See? And the big cities, of course, I mean, I know that the best planners will in fact not only build into the planning, urban planning, lungs, green spots, but also, I mean, you need to build in spots where you can, well, I suppose that term they use for gardens, sensory therapeutic gardens, you need those things all over the place. Your church, in fact, should be that as well, you know, which is why I'll be a bit distressed to leave here, because if you say, oh, well, get your flat in the shop front, you can do beautiful things. But that's beside the point, you know. There's a bird on the windowsill this morning waking me up, for which I was very grateful. It's better to be woken up by a bird than by a bloody alarm clock. The smells, but even, and the solitude, if you can manage it, you know. People go staggering around up there at the botanical gardens, and something happens, see? You can think more clearly. Now that's what Mother Nature and we, the species, need to fall in love. But not just some of us, but all of us, so that it becomes, I mean, God forgive us, we have to educate children to learn about it, whereas earlier civilizations didn't have to do that because they were living in the middle of it. When we were, what do you call it, hunters and gatherers.
This sort of leads to my next question.
Yeah.
From an environmental, it's the only religious question I've got really, from about Christianity, is from an environmental perspective, one of the accusations some people direct against religion is that of the teaching that humans have dominion.
Oh yeah, I know.
And that's being blamed for a lot of underlying. And so, do you think is the teaching of dominion is a problem, or is it being misinterpreted?
The literal interpretation of those parts of the Jewish Torah, which we call the Old Testament. Yeah, you got all that language, that biblical language, but see, we've got to learn that language, early as it is, it's only 4,000, I suppose, years old, but that language was meant to give a holistic view of the history of the planet, its origins, its demise, but it's in graphic language, and it's not meant to be taken literally, accurately literal. No. So you've got the words that are used and are more, what's the word? Mythology and legends. And as we had interviewed a bloke last night on Triple J, I can't remember his name now, a Celt. He'd say, no, not Celt, mate, Irish. All right. That in fact was talking about, in fact, I think he said the whole earth is a legend. You see, and he goes, deep and meaningful stuff. See? Yes, deep and meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the word we used was stewardship, not dominion.
Yeah.
So stewardship, I think is a nicer word, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stewardship.
Yeah.
So we take care of the earth, and the earth will take care of us.
Sure.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that the
Bobby's back.
that wants to interpret? That's Mr.
And
Franklin.
why do you think God, if you believe in God or why do you think the earth or God created humans with this illusion of separation?
Well, I would have thought there was the illusion is our problem. It's got nothing to do with the creator, but
You don't think the creator created us?
no. I mean, you've got the creation as I would have thought. Well, the creation is ongoing. I would have thought it was evolutionary. That the whole show. This is only at the beginning of how we're to work together. You see, that's the thing that everybody is not everybody, but I mean most people are hoping for, that we come up with a formula of how we are going to live together.
Yeah.
Nature and us.
Yeah.
And that will be the great next step in leap in evolution.
Sure.
You see? Nature will take care of us, we will take care of nature. It's a partnership. But how the hell, in a capitalist society, you're going to be able to control greedy people? I don't know how you do that, whether you do it by force, you forbid them to make excessive profits out, you know what I mean? Then you become the laughing stock of the capitalist world. But that's what your Occupy movements are all about.
Do you think capitalism and consumerism has almost become a religion on it?
Yeah, of course it has. But I mean, and yet everybody knows that it's destructive. But see, once you're making money out of it, I mean, who made money out of the gas ovens in the world in World War II? Somebody was making money, or they wouldn't have done it. You see?
Yeah.
World War One even apparently was waged over oil.
Yeah.
You see? And that's been going on, you know, since the beginning. I'm going to pinch your territory, I'm going to invade you, and I'm going to kill whoever gets in your way.
Some people would blame religion.
Well, I mean, religion, culture. Religion, I think, is not the guilty party. I think it's culture. But then some cultures have turned into a religion. So it's hard to know how much of Christianity is in fact cultural. The different aspects of Christianity around the world are pretty well culturally based, like there's the Roman type, which has become the dominant type. But you've got also the Eastern types of Catholicism. You've got the Coptics in Egypt, and you've got people all over the place doing it differently. But the dominant one is the Roman model, which tends to be overbearing and it tends to stand over everybody. It's helpful insofar it offers a central global clearing station or headquarters called the Vatican. It can be helpful, but then you unbalance the whole relationship when the Vatican becomes the standover.
Sure.
The rest of the church or the rest of the planet listens as though whoever's speaking from the Vatican is the one who has to. Let's listen to the Vatican. It's a sad thing, the Roman model. the previous model we had for only 5 minutes was Vatican II that said, hey, hang on, like Gaia, we're all in this together, and it's trickle up, not trickle down. See?
Sure.
So the more of that we can get going, whether it's in religion or not. I think religion is the innocent party, but cultures have to be answerable.
What about that it seems a long time ago, thousands of years ago, we had more of a matriarchal society.
Yes.
And a lot of people say we've become too patriarchal.
Oh, I mean, that's what they say, I don't know, but I mean, my Roman model of church is exactly that. That's patriarchal. See, we had a bloke who died only the other day, aged 45, what do you call it? I call it these days, psychosocially challenged. In other words, he caused terrible trouble, he caused terrible lot of good feelings. So yin and yang. But I noticed, I was just thinking before, the people who gave him most feelings of approval, mad and all as he may have been, were the women all around the place, because the women could see through the bluster. See? The blokes would tend to feel threatened and react. You looking at me. Now I would have thought that on a global scale, blokes are frightened that women will take over. I don't know what it is, see, because I'm a celibate, I'm unmarried myself. But I can see that I would have thought that we need a very intimate partnership between men and women, not just a simple, logical thing that says, well, we'll have to have a certain number of women elected to Parliament. I mean, I don't mean that. I mean, I think we'll have to fall back in love again, men and women, you see. Preferably not, well, we've already probably gone too far on our relationship based on sex. There'll have to be a relationship based on respect of the other party's personality.
So I guess it's trying to find that balance.
Yeah, whatever it is.
We don't want to go back to a matriarchal
No,
society.
but you're going to do, this is the thing that I thought you lot were going to do for us, which is to teach us balance. You see?
Well, we're working on it.
You're working on it. Well, hurry up because I'll be dead soon. I'd like to see it before I die.
Sure. Well, I've got a few questions left.
What?
Do you support the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth?
Well, I suppose I do, don't I?
Corporations have the same rights as a person, so why not Mother Earth?
Yeah. But, so it becomes a kind of, what do you call it, a pivotal statement.
There's big moves at the moment amongst many we've interviewed.
What's against it?
Environmental lawyers. What's against it would be corporations would be against it because it's giving the earth, would give forests and animal populations and that more legal standing. And so it's recognising, I guess it's recognising the earth as our mother or as a whole.
Yeah, but it's just the same, do we get ourselves into the same predicament as with whether we should pay our respects at the opening of public meetings to the original owners or human rights charters. I can never work out. See, I mean, to me, you say the human rights, yes, I'll sign them.
Yeah.
And then others, oh, don't sign it for God's sake because you've just betrayed blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, I never thought of that. But see, that as our society becomes so goddamned, legalistic. The founder of my firm, Jesus of Nazareth, kept banging on about not living by legalistic advice. Banging on about it. So much so that religious people said, shut up or we'll execute you. It's a loud voice. Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, be that as it may. Yeah, so the legalism, the moralism is a thing that I'd be afraid of because clericalism seems to feed easily off legalism and moralism, unfortunately, and that's what unfortunately runs so many churches and religions, you see, is the clerical viewpoint, see, and that's, and also political, what do you call it, correctness. so that you shy away from something. I mean, what would they have shied away from the Magna Carta? You know, that gave British people rights. Others would say, well, listen, once you've defined rights, you've limited. We're in a closed shop now. Well, I think I just don't know what I can't wrap my mind around why it won't be better for us to have a clearly defined. See, while we're in a religious vacuum, which we are in the West, we haven't got anything to build our treatment of the planet or treatment of one another even on. We can't even access to the wisdom of the race accumulated over. Therefore, we have to come up with these legal contracts. You know what I mean?
It's funny that you mentioned, the wisdom, because I guess one of my questions was, science and medicine are constantly trying to extend life and make people live forever.
Yes.
But little thought is given to that if they did make people live forever or for 500 years or so, the planet would become quickly overpopulated and overconsumed.
Yes.
So why do you think people are so scared of death and aging? And
like me.
But wrinkles are seen as a bad thing, but wrinkles mean wisdom.
Well, they may. You mean there's no fool like an old fool.
Alright.
You know what I mean? It doesn't come automatically. I'd like to be wiser the older I get, but I mean, sometimes you become more infantile. See? Well, mind you, infants are wise. But I mean, that's the whole... Wisdom was in the beginning, there was wisdom. I think the Bible tends to say in the beginning was God. But I think there's something before God, and this is a bit difficult, which is wisdom. Now, whether wisdom's God, I mean, I don't know. It's words. But I mean, the Sophia, or whatever it's called, which engulfs the whole of our world, I suppose is a simpler word. But that involves not only your physical world, but your, what do you call it, world? Your what?
The spiritual world.
Yeah, that one, see, because all the principles have to be applied to both the physical and the spiritual world, because you've got spiritual environment, you've got spiritual... We're talking about internal or interior. Well, then, of course, you've got to look at that seriously, and I'd like to see, a practical approach to both.
Do you think we first need to work on our inner environment
before
the outer environment can be repaired?
Or whether you do them both at the same time. I don't know. See, I mean, we tend to have to be ambidextrous in dealing with these things, because we don't seem to be able to, or we seem to be capable of doing more things than one. See? And once again, the woman comes in, the woman shows that she can do more things than one. Now, whether blokes can't or not, I don't know, but I mean, maybe the women could be the ones who think their way through this. I oftentimes would hope that, in fact, when there's a sticky situation on here between people, or like that bloke yelling outside or whatever, you'd be far better off if the women would say, oh, he's all right, leave him alone, he's in da-da-da-da-da. Or the bloke will say, no, I'm going to call the police. Now, it might be the same in the whole, how are you going to have United Nations of what? Of women talking about, the conclusions they would come to would be far different from the conclusions of blokes coming to. And one may be no better than the other, but you've got to get back to your, what do you call it?
Balance.
Balance, you see? And try to through conversation, have a conversation rather than have a debate. Instead of passing resolutions, come to a consensus. All that stuff I would have hoped would have been on the way. Now, whether you've got to get rid of Islam, Judaism, or the toxic versions of those, and Christianity, and Buddhism, all the rest. Whether you have to try to be on the qui-vive so that those religions put themselves at the service of the planet and the race. See, that's a big thing. There's a woman called Karen Armstrong who writes good books about the history of religions. Now, her latest book, and she's written lots of books about it, her latest book would say, look, girls and boys, we really better accept, it's like a charter of religious wisdom. She'd say, can we not boil them all down to one, and that is the golden rule. See, do unto others as you would they do unto you. Leave it at that. Now, all the rest she'd say is commentary. So you can have a complicated religious statement, but I mean, it has to be a commentary on the one rule, she says. And we've got to accept that globally. You see what I mean? And I like that. It sounds oversimplified, and the clerics will quake in their boots because they'll feel as though they're going to be put out of business. You see? Because they only have to specialise in one. And that's what your Jesus of Nazareth, I would have thought, when pressed, what is the greatest commandment? He said, he knew he was talking to Jews, so he had to repeat the Jewish mantra, love the Lord your God with all yes. But he said, they said, what's this one? He said, there's another one equally important, that is, you've got to love your neighbour as yourself. Now that's the mantra that Karen Armstrong and other writers are recommending. Sure. Simplify the thing. See, and your lot will be recommending that we simplify our relationship with the earth. It's only when this bloody dollar pops up that we all start running around in circles and saying, oh Jesus, we're going to lose money, or he's going to have to knock back the making of money, you know what I mean?
Yeah. This leads me on to my next question. Is that combined world debt is far greater than what the earth can repay with the resources and the environmental health, because ultimately the earth pays it through digging up, turning the earth into good products. With a debt that can never be repaid, do we need a modern day jubilee of sorts, where that's like a cancelling of all debt, a freedom to all slaves? And
well, you can go back to your older civilisations and primitive, what are they not? Primitive doesn't sound right. Earlier civilisations and earlier religions that went with them, and you'll probably find that. In fact, if you go back to the origins, you'll often find that these so-called moral prescriptions are based on what's best for the earth and what's best for the race. You know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, seems to be based on necessity and on practicality. It seems that way. And it would be the same, I would have thought, with this taking care of the universe and taking care of the goods of the earth. You'll have to go back, and that wisdom tends to say, listen, if you keep going the way that greed will tempt you to go, well then we're all going to be the losers, so let's have a break. So they had Jubilee years. Give it all a rest. You see? And Islam, don't forget, also is frowns on taking interest, on usury.
Usury.
As though this is going to bleed you to death, which everybody knows in a capitalist society. If you end up on the wrong side of a mortgage or something, will you bleed to death?
Didn't Jesus teach about, the Bible teaches about like not to get into usury?
I don't know that Jesus does, but Jesus went further than that. He's saying, look, if someone asks you for your cloak, give him your cloak and your coat. You see, he goes the other way and says, well look, let's spin this thing, and let's in fact not only worry about what not to do, but let's worry about maybe exaggerated doing of good, because you'll need an overdose of doing good. See, no, you don't have to give that to me, you know. You better, no, hang on, you're going to push the point, you're going to give me the pen, you're also going to give me the camera. And I'm protesting and saying, no, there's no need, and you're knowing that in fact you've become so obsessed with the bloody camera that if you don't give it away, it'll kill you. See? So there's all that. That's a wider. That's almost arithmetic. No, it's not. It's almost exponential. Don't take interest is arithmetic. It's a bit of an increase in the pool of goodness, wisdom.
It's wisdom.
Yeah. But if you want to go further than that, I don't know what you call it. You call it stupidity or something, but I mean it would be wisdom to the nth degree, because somebody has happened to see that if an overdose of in fact extravagant benevolence, I'm going to give you all mine. All right. in fact seems to have a massive what? Gives you massive resistance maybe as an individual, as a community, to this creeping greed. See?
Mm.
I'm so frightened of greed, says Mr. Bloggs, that I'm going to give you all my stuff. Ooh. See? So then you who receive all his stuff say, oh Jesus, I mean he must know something to give me all his stuff, so I think I'll divide it up in parcels and give it to 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
See?
If we had a modern day jubilee,
Yeah.
and we would, it seems that we would need to reset economics in a totally new fashion rather
Yes.
than starting the whole
Yeah.
thing again.
Yeah.
So what would you think?
I'll bug it if I know. People come up with this business about should we go back to bartering.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, it's beyond me, comrade, but
Well, perhaps lowering interest by a great.
oh yeah, that would be good. But you see, you're going to end up with Fanny and Freddie, all of those who will confound you and confuse you, and say, but you've got the chance of getting that man's house on the hill. You see, because he's gone broke, you can take it off him. I mean, there's a thing in a paper this morning where 2 old girls, in fact, ended up, I don't know how they did it, on property up in Hillsborough somewhere. Where they squatted and ended up almost having the right of possession.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, geez, that's old-fashioned, I mean, tribal almost, going back to the days when I think that how you acquire property,
Yeah.
even if in one of the parables.
7 years, I think.
Is it? Is it?
7 years if you've got.
Yeah.
It's 12.
12,
Okay.
if it's vacant.
Yeah.
You pay the rates for
See,
12
and all
years.
that stuff.
It comes yours.
See? But there's one story in the Old Testament, I think, where he said, I want that orchard down there. And she said, go and get the bloody orchard down there. He said, but there's somebody on it. She said, well, fix him up. So he went and killed the bloke with the orchard.
Mass?
No,
Okay.
all of that. And pinched the orchard. Because the first on the scene, after a death of a sole occupant of a property, apparently could take it over. But everybody listening to the story knew if you actually killed the bloke to get the property, well, that wasn't the spirit of the tribal law. See? So it's I don't know how you'd start again. I mean, maybe we could look as you lot keep telling us, and we're supposed to have told people moderation.
Yeah.
But we've lost the struggle because we ourselves have become capitalists.
Yeah. There's a thing called steady state economics that they're working on to keep growing, but growing more with a growth rate in line with the earth.
Yeah, all right.
We're out
Yeah,
doing
all right. All the best.
Yeah. So there is
All the
things
best.
happening. And leading to that, one question I missed earlier is, do you think the earth needs saving, or is that a human egotistical view?
Well, it'll tell us out itself, won't it? I mean, we're supposed to be observing. We're supposed to be in partnership. How does she look? I don't know. 1 minute they're telling me all the bloody polar bears are running around looking for a refrigerator to jump into. And the next minute somebody says, no, they're not. They're perfectly happy the way they are. Somebody else says, well, look, this is the way cycles go. Greenland is now available for real estate.
Drill for oil.
Isn't it?
Yeah, they're drilling.
All of that kind of thing.
They're drilling for
I
oil.
would have thought that we should use our nuts. Now I don't know how you. The hardest exercise for a human being to perform is to think. See, not how to climb bloody up the stairs of Eureka Towers, but how to think.
Yeah.
We've got to learn to think things through. Which is where you get back to the earlier civilizations where you had people to help you to get work.
Sure.
So you had elders, and it's all risky business because even then you see you might get a corrupt bunch of elders, or you
Sure.
might get an acquisitive bunch of gurus or something.
Yeah.
But it just means good human beings have to live like the dog does. The dog, in fact, has to live by instinct on certain things because the dog, has highly developed senses of smell and hearing and whatever else it's got, sight or something, but it can't talk and it can't think allegedly. Whereas we allegedly can talk and think, but we haven't got heightened, those other senses, are not available to us in a heightened way. So we're handicapped, you see. And we have to study the environment.
So we've got like 95% of climate scientists are going, it's real and it's happening. So the vast majority of scientists are onto it, but then the vast majority of the general population think it's all a conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what you know, if that's what they want to think it is, so they can exploit the planet. Well, we haven't got the time or the energy to spend on thinking, and that's in the best interests of the capitalist system that says the last thing in the world we want is for the citizens to think. And they can't think if they haven't got time. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't let them have time to think. Which annoys me, because if I remember 20, 30 years ago, I thought you lot were going through some kind of an exercise whereby we were going to work less and the machines were going to help us to work less, and then we were going to have more time to think and play, you see. I think one of the basic things, and I'm too old now to do anything about it, is that Mother Earth needs to be seen to be a player. You know, I would say to be religious, God at play, you see, not God at work, which is a pretty po-faced way of looking at, I think, at what's going on. And it's too bloody big for us to wrap our heads around anyway. But I mean, I had a poor bugger who's mad, the one who died the other day, but I caught him the other night whooping, you know, way out there looking at the telly. Come out and see this, he said. I thought, what the? It was a National Geographic, and we're all going into space, and there's millions of stars. Oh God, he was beside himself with delight. You see, poor bugger's dead in another 2 days. But he might have gone there. You see what I mean?
Sure.
So whether we're part, in fact, of the, as George Monbiot, I think, who's a bit of pinko leftist, didn't he? George Monbiot. But I mean, he had a piece almost lyrical, where after death we're becoming. He said we should be perfectly happy after death because the DNA continues to exist and it all floats off and becomes part of the carbon silicon cloud or something, and so the story goes on. So now I don't find that offensive. It's a different language to my religious language about heaven and earth and bloody choirs of angels and all that. I don't. They're both, you know. So yeah, I was thinking. Then I was listening to him whooping. It's a pity that we can't even see the stars in the cities because it's smog.
Yeah. In the light.
If you're lying on your back out in the middle of the Nullarbor Plain or somewhere, you see. Television helps you to see that, I suppose, a bit, but it's not all encompassing. You can't walk into the room where you have the stars wrapped around you. You can only look at it as a two-dimensional, you know. So yeah, the whole show should be enjoyed. See, it's not. It shouldn't be Opus Dei, which is a strange word in Catholicism because it's a right-wing order of clergymen. But Opus Dei means God at work, whereas Ludus Dei means God at play. And I'd rather think, and some of the Bible sayings in fact say that this is God at play. And God likes to play with the human race, not maliciously like the gods of Mount, whatever it is, Olympus, but likes to sing and dance and play, you see. So we need more singing and dancing, you see, and less whinging and moaning and wringing our hands.
Conflict and so do you think we first need to work on the inner wars before we'll get the outer wars? You know, we'll stop.
I suppose so. That's supposed to be part of growing up, though, isn't it? I mean, you know, that's what you want elders for, whether they're parental elders or tribal elders or something, that help you not to lose the taste for inner, whatever it's called. Well, the inner ecology, I suppose, the balance. You know, some of the earlier religions were based on all that, you know, yin and yang and chi, is it chi?
Yeah.
And all those kinds of things. Yeah. I suppose by the time Jesus of Nazareth comes on the scene, you've got peace and all of that kind of thing. You see, rather than have it coming from a religious practice, I think your Jesus of Nazareth wanted it to come from where it is safest, which is within you. So he's a bit of a, what do you call it, an iconoclast insofar as the temple and the synagogue, not so much he was against, but the temple, where you almost had to go and hand yourself over to the clerical caste to perform the sacrifices for you, to take your money, thank you, for the sacrificial victims, all of that. It was abhorrent. Synagogue, he never had that. He had trouble, but not that much trouble with it, because it wasn't so overtly, what do you call it, anti-people, see? Much less bureaucracy in the synagogue, only the rabbi and his missus or something. Temple is a vast industry, very offensive, environmentally unfriendly, spiritually. So I would hope, you see, with this deluge of secularism right around the world, that you would end up with the best of secular, which can be as sacred as the best of religion can be sacred. I don't hate this. I'm not frightened by the secular, only by toxic secular. The same as toxic religious.
Yeah, your radical extreme.
Yeah, you get to the sacred, which is in, what's the word? Independent of both secular and religious. Yeah. And it gets back to your word, which is wisdom. I presume that wisdom is the original sacred. You see? Now, how to get wisdom to percolate down through all the systems, political, human relationship systems, business, all that kind of stuff. That's going to be the great.
Do you think we should be celebrating, like I know I've heard that a lot of like Easter and Christmas, some of the origins originated from older pagan type festivals.
Well, pagan were all right. See, pagan
that worship the earth more. In that
yeah, all of that. But I mean, I think the original meaning of paganus or something was someone who lived in the country. I think, which meant all those sophisticated religions were mainly urban.
Sure.
And I think that's why the Romans were so ashamed of themselves when their sophisticated urban religion was in fact taken over by the pagan northern tribes who brought with them their pagan practices. But then they fell for it, I think, eventually in Rome when they said, oh, well, I mean, this is a better organised thing. Well, then we're going to end up with a mixture of pagan Romanism, you see. So, yes.
Well, I guess it was about celebrating the earth's
all of that.
Natural cycles.
Yeah, all of that. So that's what I'm glad this little patch on the corner of Dorcas and Montague will in fact have religious practices in the Bluestone Church, but they'll also have spiritual, inverted commas, religious practices on the corner over there with Bank Street, where you've got the environmental, where you've got the organic, what do you call it?
All
organic
that,
food.
Yeah.
And over here with the 40 units of community housing will be another secular show of what we would call on religious preference for looking after the poor first. See what I mean? How much of this we got to go?
It must be nearly at a time. What time is it?
Time is now 12:15.
Oh, we've gone further. You've got to do your maths, don't you?
No, I don't think so. I think somebody else is over there saying prayers, but I've got to do something else.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, look, we've pretty much covered all the questions outside the box, so that's great. We've covered them all.
Have we?
Yeah, done that.
Is that all right, sir?
That's
You've had enough, haven't you?
Oh, hey, I could stay here all day.